Hello, welcome to the Inflectra webinar on Spira 6.3. My name's Adam Sandman, and thanks for joining today. Okay, here we go. Here's our agenda today. We're going to be, first of all, doing a little introduction into Spira Test, Spira Team, and SpiraPlan for those people who are not familiar with the platform. The main focus of today's webinar, though, is the new features we've introduced and rolled out in Spira 6.3. And Spira 6.3 went live for cloud users over the weekend and has been available for download for about 10 days. So if you are an on-premise user of Spira, please take the opportunity now to look at the release notes and download the product after today's webinar. I'm going to go through the main new features, the save views, the breadcrumbing, and some of the other features. That will all be done in a presentation format. And then I'm going to be moving into a live application demo in the system, so you'll see it in action. So first we'll just go over it in a summary, and then we'll go over it in more detail in the live application. If you're new to GoToWebinar, the platform we're using, you can write your questions down at any time. So as we're going through the presentation and then the live demo, if you've got questions, you can write them down in the window in the application. And when we get to the end of the demo portion, I'm going to switch us into Q&A. And then the Q&A will be based on the questions you've written into the window. I can read them out to everyone on the call, and we'll go through the demonstrating how you can use the application, answer the questions. We will be posting a recording of this call on our YouTube channel as well. So if you know anyone who couldn't make today's webinar, don't worry, we will be recording it as well. So again, thanks so much for joining. And first of all, let's just go into a bit of an overview of Spira. So Spira is Inflectra's platform for project management, test management, and program management. And Spira comes in 3 flavors. Spira Test is our entry flavor, and that's really focused on managing a testing or QA team. The core of Spira Test is a test management solution. It also can do some requirements management and bug tracking and issue tracking, and its focus is really to provide a tool for managing a testing or QA team. One level higher in the portfolio then would be Spira Team. Spira Team is our application lifecycle management, and what that means is it's designed to be used across different disciplines. So it's designed to provide functionality for business analysts, for the QA team, the defect management team, the product team, developers, the people managing the project at different levels, but really all the tools you need to manage a software development or systems engineering project. So everything from writing requirements, creating the source code, managing the development activities, testing it, integrating it, deploying it, and then ultimately supporting it. So managing all those different activities at a project or team level for a single system or single product family. And then SpiraPlan takes you one level higher. SpiraPlan is our program and portfolio management solution designed for large enterprises that need to manage hundreds of projects in many different programs where they can be grouped into portfolios, and also includes our enterprise risk management module where you can do management of risks across projects and programs and track mitigations and so on. So really an enterprise tool set, and you can start with Spira Test, move to Team, or move to Plan, and the data is all the same. We just add more features. So the great thing is you can start at the lowest level and then move up as it makes sense for your organization. And for those, again, who've not used the tool before, some of the key features include the fact that you've got integrated program and project dashboards, so you can manage the project at the release level, the sprint level, or the product level. You can also then combine several products and projects together to get a program-wide view. And the metrics we include would cover the different parts of the system, the requirements, the testing, the risks. All of those different aspects can be included into the dashboard. So there's different views for the different users. So for testers, there's a view. For test managers, there's a different view for the development managers, and then the DevOps and CI teams and the risk management groups. All of different views of those dashboards pre-built. Next, we also have a robust requirements management module within Spira, particularly within the SpiraPlan and Spira team. There's a basic one in Spira Test. It includes multiple different views of requirements where you can see requirements in a document format. You can see the traceability in our unique mind map view that you see at the bottom there. And then we have a classic QA view where you can see all the requirements in the tree structure, and you can see the test coverage and task progress. So Spira gives you those different requirements management views depending on the type of project. Is it agile? Is it waterfall? Is it hybrid? Is it regulated? Is it not regulated? And then for Agile projects in particular, we do have a set of planning boards. We have a main planning board that covers requirements and defects and tasks and test cases. We also have boards specifically for requirements and user stories, for tasks, and a specific set of boards for maintenance around defects and the flow of defects. And the boards support both Scrum and Kanban, also some hybrid methodologies such as when you have Scrum and Kanban combined, or extreme programming. And you can scale these up to the program level as well if you're doing large enterprise agile planning. One feature that's unique to the SpiraPlan edition of Spira is risk management. This is a new feature we added earlier last year, where you can now manage risks with probabilities, impacts, exposures. You can track mitigations, you can track action items. It gives you a full enterprise risk management module that's then fully integrated into the requirements tracking, into the defects, and into the tests. So it's not just a standalone module, it does fully integrate with the rest of the system, bringing risks into your project plans. And then, of course, the core of all three flavors of Spira is the test management, and we can support test management from a product standpoint, program standpoint. We can manage it across different releases and sprints. We can do manual testing. We can manage automated testing. We have test configurations that let you manage different data grids and different data sets. You can also organize your tests into sets and suites for automation. And we also support parameterized testing, where you can have different components of tests combined together to create more robust test cases. Of course, testing is a mixture of manual and automated, and for automation, we have a large library of different plugins. You can either use our test automation tool, Rapise, or you can integrate with other commercial tools from either our competitors or from other open source tools and frameworks as well. So whatever you're using for testing today, there's different tools that integrate with those different testing frameworks. SpiraPlan also includes, and Spira Team and Test also do include, a dish issue and defect tracking system. You can manage defects, you can manage it in a board view or a general list view. There's inline graphs and reporting. And typically, you're going to run the test cases in Spira. You're going to log the defects during testing. You can either manage those issues and defects completely within Spira, or you can integrate it with other tools that we have in our ecosystem. So, for example, you can integrate it with Jira or Microsoft Azure DevOps, formerly TFS, or GitLab or GitHub, or ServiceNow. So we do integrate with other platforms. So that way, if your two teams are using different tools on different projects, it's not a problem. You can integrate those together. And then also we do provide a source code management module based on either Git or Subversion. So many teams, of course, are using Git now for its distributed version control and branching. Some teams are still using Subversion. We integrate with either of those two tools. And if you're using our cloud platform, we can actually provide you a free cloud-hosted service of Subversion and Git. And one change this year, starting this month with the release of 6.3, we've actually made this feature free. So if you are using Spira Team or SpiraPlan already, previously you would get one free user and you had to purchase additional users. We are now making Tara Vault, which is again our Subversion and Git service, completely free. So you can have as many users as you like and manage all of your source code inside of Spira. We also do have a task tracking module, so you can manage project tasks, development tasks, management tasks using a full work breakdown structure. You can have an agile view using the boards where you can have the tasks tied to user stories. You can also have the tasks tracked in folders and swim lanes as well. We do support different workflows, and those tasks are then either linked typically to a requirement or user story, or to a risk if it's a risk mitigation action item. So that's an overview of Spira, a brief set of the features. If you're interested to learn more about how Spira works in general, we do have some other videos on our YouTube channel. We also can do private demos. So if you're new to the product and you need a demo, please contact our sales team at sales@inflectra.com. We're always happy to do a webinar or demo for you. Also, we do public demos of the tool. So we are doing a webinar series on Agile, which includes features Spira. So again, something else to look for. But today's presentation is primarily around the new features we added in 6.3. So we're going to jump into those right now. So the first thing we added in 6.3, and some of the most asked for features, are really improvements around the filtering and the saving of views and the creation of views. And a view is something new we've added in 6.3. If you've used Spira for a while, you'll be familiar that you typically can filter most of the list pages, most of the grids. They support filtering. Some of the ones that are not hierarchical also support sorting. And you've been able for a long time to save those filters and sorts together as a favorite. And typically they're called save filters or saved favorites. and those would consist of the filter selection and the sort if one was set. And that was pretty much it. We've added some new enhancements in this latest version that means not only can you save the filter and the sort, but you can also now select the layout. So if you've shown or hidden different columns, you can now include that in your view. And you can also, if you've dragged and dropped the column to change the order, or you've stretched the column to make it wider or narrower, those settings are all now possible to be saved with the view. And it's available through this checkbox that we'll see later on in the live demo, where you can now say save the column selection. So really we've gone from merely saving a filter to now really saving a view. And that means you can have different saved views, share them with your team members, and that way when you give someone that view to click on, you can see, you know exactly the layout they're going to see. You know what filters are going to be in place, you know which columns they're going to see, you know which order the columns will be in and how wide they'll be. So it really makes it easy to set up views for people who may be new to the tool to improve the onboarding experience as you add new team members. And then the other thing, which is really more for people who do create the views to make their lives easier, is you'll see this new button saying update existing. It means it's now much easier to actually update a filter and change it and then save the updated version before you have to create a new one each time and remove the old one, which is a bit of a pain. Another thing we've done is also added some consistency. So if you use the documents part of Spira, you will have noticed there was an absence of saving views. You couldn't save a filter, you couldn't save a sort, you obviously couldn't save columns either because that didn't yet exist. But we've added the save view functionality that you have on the other pages now into the documents section as well. So you can now have shared views for documents just like the other artifacts in the system. Another common usability question and feature question is really around the sharing of folders. And if you've used Spira for a while, you hopefully are familiar with the fact that you can have different tabs open with different artifacts. So you can control click on requirements 1, 2, and 3 and have them open in different tabs, or test case 1, 2, and 3, which is really nice. You can then have a different tab open. You can also share those URLs with members of the team or other teams, and then they can click on the links and it will open up the right artifact, the right requirement, and look at it, which is really good. However, people have often wanted to say, share a folder. I want to give you a folder to look at, and I want to be able to share that folder with you. Previously, Spira didn't really have a way of doing that. There's no URL that really marks the folder specifically, so that means you couldn't share the folder. And the second thing you couldn't do, which is related to this, is you couldn't open multiple folders at once. So if I opened up my regression tabs test folder, I couldn't then, on another browser tab, open up my functional test folder, because if I opened that up in the other tab, it would actually switch the view on my first tab because they were kept in sync. So by having unique URLs now where we tie in the ID of the folder, we're now able to have multiple tabs open at once. So you can have multiple folders open at once, just like you can have multiple artifacts open at once. And that also means you can now share them with team members as well. And a further refinement that now is possible for this very reason is you can now use those shared URLs to have clickable breadcrumbs. So if you've ever gone onto one of the requirements pages or test case pages, you'll notice that we added a breadcrumb at the top, like you can see in this diagram, where you can see the folder path from the top of the tree down to your current test case. And we've had that for a while, but it wasn't clickable, which meant that you would see it, and if you wanted to actually go up to that folder level, you had to go out to the sidebar or somewhere else to go find there, and it was a little bit inconvenient. So to improve the usability, we now have added those breadcrumbing on all the artifacts, and we've made sure they're all clickable. So that's really improved the usability when navigating from a specific point in the tree up to the parent, or from a child requirement up to a parent requirement. Another feature we added, which is another productivity improvement, came from another customer we talked to, which was around the conversion of incidents to requirements. We've had this feature for a while where you can take a user story, take an enhancement or a change request, and we can turn it into a user story or turn it into a requirement. Because in many cases, you have a lot of incidents you've been tracking, a lot of enhancements, a lot of ideas, and it's very convenient to manage those in the defect tracker because it's so much easier to manage them in there. You can sort them, you can filter them, and then when it's time to actually go ahead and build a feature, you might take a change request and turn it into a new feature, or maybe multiple change requests get combined into one feature, or vice versa. A very big enhancement might get broken down into multiple user stories. So this feature we have lets you turn a defect, enhancement, a change request into a new requirement with one click. The problem we found was that in doing so, although we copied over the name and description, we weren't typically copying over the attachments, the priorities, the importances, and the custom fields, custom properties or components. So that meant that when you got that new requirement, it was missing some of the important information that would have made it more useful. So then you had to click back to the original defect, which was one more step to have to go. So if you wanted to create test cases to support the requirement, you now have to create the requirement from the defect, link the test cases, but then fill in a whole bunch of other fields. So we've now streamlined this to improve what gets copied over. And one other thing we've done is, in addition to everything that you'll see that's very visible, we've also spent some time refactoring some of our stored procedures to improve performance. We found one or two that are really critical to the operation of the system, and we've worked really hard to improve the performance of those ones, particularly the ones that update the data. When you run a test case and it has to update the status of the linked releases, the linked requirements, and then up the tree structure, we've added a lot of new store procs and refined the ones we have to improve the performance, and we've measured it as about a 30% improvement for a lot of key data operations. And obviously, this is not the end of the road for us. We are working right now on version 6.4, and there'll be a webinar on that. And all of the version you see on our roadmap, so 6.4 is going to be OAuth, primarily in reporting. 6.5 is going to be portfolios and programs, and 6.6 is going to be baselining. Each of these major features that you see is also going to be accompanied with more of these usability and quality of life improvements. So even though you may not see that written under the banner for that particular release, every release we're going to try and improve things like we see in this version, improvements for making the system more usable, and also performance improvements as well, so that where we can improve performance whilst adding features. So, and if you have, of course, feedback or ideas, please send them to our support team at the support@inflectra.com, or you can contact our customer success Jessica, or you can reach out to me or other members of the team. We're always looking to get ideas, and many of the features you're going to see in today's live demo and the features I mentioned have actually come from customer visits or from feedback that was emailed to us, or both. So with that, I'm going to move now into the live demo of the application. So we move from PowerPoint into Spira right over here. Go to webinar. And the first thing we'll do in Spira is jump into the new filtering and views enhancement. Before we jump into the artifact view, one thing I just want to mention is, as well as the main enhancement that I mentioned, we've added a few other small enhancements. One is if you go to the project homepage for the system, for the project in the system, we've made it so that you can more easily remove save filters. So these are my saved searches. And previously, if you wanted to remove a saved search, a shared view, basically, you had to be the creator of it. So if I was Fred and I created this critical not covered requirements filter or view as it is now, I could come into the My Page or into the project homepage and I could remove it. The delete button was there. Previously, though, I'm logged in as system administrator, and I'm not the creator of at least two of these. Previously, this delete button was missing, which meant that if Fred left the company or was taken off the team, there wasn't a way for anyone to actually remove the shared filter, and they would get built up in the user interface and just sit there and pollute the system. So we've now made it so that if you are the creator of a shared view or shared filter, you can always remove it. However, if you're the project level administrator or higher, you now can also delete it as well, regardless of whether you are the creator or not. So that makes it much easier for the manager of the project to keep track of what's going on and clean things up proactively. The other thing we've done, if we jump into the requirements view now to start looking at some of the filtering, is we've also added a tooltip change on these save filters. So if you look at the save filter, you can see in the tooltip not just the name of the save filter or shared filter, but also in the arrow underneath, you can see who created it. And this is also very useful because people often didn't realize who actually had created it in this view. So you see these views, these filters, maybe they have a very similar name. You can now see who actually created that in the tooltip. So let's go in here and let's just show all levels. Okay, so this is our requirements view, and this is our requirements hierarchy. If we're in this view, we might want to, filter this in some way. So let's say we decided to filter that by, let's look at all the requirements that have got at least one failure. So there's about 3 plus their parents. And let's say we only want to include the ones that are critical. And critical, that's fine, it's like that. So we've now got these 2 columns in the filter. And you can create a shared filter to do that. You go to filter, save filter, great. And this dialog now is a little bit different previously there was no option to do that. If you created a new one, that was fine. When you tried to then make a change to it, you had to actually create another one. You can make it with the same name, and then you had to go back in and physically delete the old one. There was no way of taking one and updating it. So let's say we create this filter, and we'll call it, it's failed P1 requirements. And we're going to save that. We're going to save our column selection. When I refresh the page, you'll see it now appears. And let's go and clear my filter. But now let's also hide one of the columns. So we're going to hide the importance column. We're also going to show a different column that we're not going to use. We're going to show the, let's see, we'll show the difficulty column over here. So that's a moderate difficulty. So we've now showed that column and we've hidden the other column. Great. So if we now were to click on that shared view, the failed P1 requirements, it's going to retrieve the filters like it would have done before. It's going to search for failed P1 requirements, but it's also put that importance field back in the view. It also has hidden that difficulty, that field that we had as well in the custom fields on the right. So that's the great thing. You can now have different views that you can save. And when you save that view, it saves the column order, the column width, and also whether that column is visible or not. And this is particularly useful where you have, for example, a field like importance that you're filtering on, because that field might have been hidden by someone. And if they retrieve that view, that filter in the old version of the system, it will be filtering on it. And because they didn't necessarily look at the top here to see what was being filtered on, they might not realize it was being filtered by critical priority, and they'd wonder why only 5 rows or 6 rows are showing up. So it really helps to have the column selection saved with it, because now when it retrieves back and shows the column, you can see exactly what you're filtering on. Now, the other thing you might want to do is you might want to change the filter. This is a critical or failed P1 requirements. Let's say it's also critical P1 requirements that are developed. Only those ones. So let's do that. And actually, we want, and maybe also release wants to be set. So we'll filter it down to just release 1.2. And now we want to update our filter. We can now go back in and say save filter, update existing. We choose the failed P1 and we hit save. And now it's updated. If we refresh, we'll clear our filters altogether. And then we're going to reactivate it. And there you go. We've now got a filter on coverage, importance, and release and status. And that forms your shared view because it's now storing the filter, the column layout, which includes the position, whether it's hidden or visible, and the width. And if you have sorting, like on a test case or a task, it's also going to save the sort as well. And this functionality is the same across the system now. So if we go to, for example, the test case module, you'll notice we have the same thing. We have shared filters. Right here, save filters rather. And if we go ahead, we can do the same thing. We can go to functional test cases. We can search by a failed test case of type functional. And we can save that. Failed functional tests. Hit save. Refresh our page. Clear our filters. Maybe we'll show a different column. We'll hide a column. We'll hide the type column. And then we'll reactivate our filter. And there you go, type is back, filter is active. So that's some of the improvements there. And then as I mentioned in the presentation, we've also added the same filtering capabilities to the planning documents view. So this is very similar to what we just saw in the test cases. It's a sortable grid. It has that filtering. We now have the ability to filter on it and save that filter just like we did with the other pages. So this previously was missing. You can now run that shared filter and it's going to look for the completed screen layouts. So if we go into a specific folder that has screen layouts, for example, specs, I think, or let's have a look, design documents, there you go. You can now see that we're filtering by screen layout and by type status completed. Perfect. So that's the shared filter and save filtering and the shared views. Now, the other thing we've done in Spira in 6.3 is also around making it more usable, but it's more around the folders. So if I go back to my test case view over here, previously, if you went to, say, the functional test case folder, and I wanted to open another browser tab and look at the regression tests, I couldn't really do it, because if you hovered the mouse over it, there was no way of actually control clicking. It wouldn't actually work. It would just do nothing. And if you click on it in the same tab, obviously it will load it, but that's not as useful. So now we've given them unique URLs. So if you look in the toolbar at the bottom as I move, you'll notice the URL is changing. So there's now a unique URL that if I control click on, it's different to this one. This has got a little ID1, ID2, folder 1, folder 2. And so that means if I was to share this link with someone, they can now open up that folder, and it will automatically have opened that folder for them. It also means you, on one machine, can open up multiple folders on the same browser in different tabs, like this. So I've got 4 tabs open with 4 different folders. So that really improves the usability of. They also have the fact that means you can have multiple tabs open as well. Now, the other benefit this gave us when we added this feature is it means that when you go to a specific test case, you now have breadcrumbing. And because we have a URL for a folder, we now have breadcrumbing that you can then click on, because these links will basically use those new URLs to open up an appropriate page. So for example, this is the functional test case folder that I'm in. I can very clearly see that this test case is inside the functional tests. Whereas if I was to go down into regression tests, click on one here, I'll see that one's in regression tests. Furthermore, if I go down multiple levels, which is more useful again, I can now see that I'm in the exception scenario tests folder in the scenario tests folder. And if I control click or click, I can open up either of these two in different windows and have my tabs. So I can actually go from this page to open them, view the parents right here with one click. Versus before I would have to go to the sidebar, try and remember which folder I'm in, get to that folder, then click on it and open it. So now I've got shareable folders tied to my breadcrumbing. Similarly, for hierarchical artifacts, so this is a flat list with folders. When you click on a breadcrumb, it opens up the folder list and applies the filter. Now, if you go to something like requirements, it is hierarchical. The same is true of releases. When you click on an item, you do get a breadcrumb, but the breadcrumb is not a folder breadcrumb. It is a parent item breadcrumb. It's also clickable, and now if you click on it, instead of it going back to the list page, it's going to open up, say in this case, the requirement, because that has its own page, and it's going to open that up directly in the same view. So if I happen to be on a requirement down here, I can basically open up its parents just as easily. So if I close these off, I'm here. I could open up book management, library system, or functional, all in different tabs. So it makes navigating really easy. Also, it makes it much easier to see where you are in the system. Another thing we've done is we also added that same functionality to releases, and in version 6.2 and earlier, releases didn't even have a breadcrumb. So now because we have a more powerful breadcrumbing system, you now do have the ability to see in the breadcrumb in the release section as well. And that can be really useful where you have things like sprint 1 and sprint 1. Well, they're both sprint 1s. One is in release 1, one is in release 1.1, and the breadcrumb makes that much more apparent. We always highlighted it in the tree structure, but now it's really clear where you are, and it's really easy to go to that specific release from the sprint. So that's some of the improvements around the breadcrumbing and the folder shareability. Now, the other thing I mentioned we've done, if we go into the incident tracker, is you can now more easily and more powerfully create a defect into a requirement. So let's say we go to this one here. In fact, let's create a new one though, because I used that in the last demo and it'll be a little bit easier. Let's create a new incident. We're going to call it a enhancement. It's a enhancement to add a new login system to the product. In description, we'll put in, need to improve the login process. See screenshot. Let's put in a screenshot. And we'll go to this, let's get a screenshot of that page. We'll put that in, pretend that's our screenshot like that. There you go, nice. That's a high priority. It's going to affect Windows 10, Windows 8, say. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be using Firefox, and it's going to be in the administration section. We'll hit save. Oh, and I put a release in. Hit save. and we'll assign that to, let's say, a release. So we'll assign it to me, but then it's Fred. Resolve release will be 1.02. Put some dates in. So we'll fill out some of the fields. Hit save, and we have our open enhancement. So now we have this enhancement, which is great. We now want to turn that into a requirement. So months later, this enhancement gets approved to be included in the system. Maybe so that's great. And what we want to do now is turn that into a requirement. So you go to the associations tab, and you're going to use the add button. We'll choose, instead of choosing one here, we just choose this button. That's going to create a new requirement directly from the incident. So we hit the button. There it is right here. It's now in the requirement module. Let's go ahead and look at it. I'll control click so we can compare the two. So when it now goes into the requirements module, it has the same title as the defect or the enhancement. It has the same text, the screenshots right here, which is great. It also has the priority chosen correctly, the components chosen correctly, the difficulties chosen. Web browser and OS were not fields. If they were, they'd also be populated as well. The release, the author, the owner, all the fields are set correctly. And furthermore, there is a link back to the original defect for traceability. And then the other nice feature we added is the attachment is right here. There's our screenshot. It's attached directly to this requirement. In the old version of Spira 6.2 or earlier, you would see this attachments tab and it would be empty. To get to the attachment, you had to go to the association, go back to the original defect, and then you would get access to the attachment. Similarly, some of the fields that you see here were not filled out either. The priority was not set, the component was not set, the custom fields were not set, the difficulty, for example, was not set. Now that's going to be set directly here in the requirement. So as a manager, someone creating the requirements from the incidents, you no longer have to go back and do a bunch of manual work just to keep them in sync. It's going to automatically inherit all those properties from the original change request. And this was definitely requested by one of our key users. So that's the creation of the requirement from the incident. And that was the last of the new features we added. There were also a whole bunch of bug fixes we did in 6.3. There was the performance improvements that will be noticeable for users of large data sets. And also, we again improve usability in several areas, and we'll be doing that more in future versions as well. So that's our overview of the new system. So again, thanks so much for attending this webinar. We will be posting a recording on our YouTube channel, and we'll be releasing Spira 6.4 in the next month or so, and we'll have another webinar when that's released. And the next version is going to have two main areas of focus. One is a new authentication system based on OAuth, so it allows you to connect Spira to your OAuth system, which could be Google, it could be Facebook, it could be what's it called, GitLab, GitHub. We're also looking to integrate with Microsoft ADFS. We're going to need some beta customers for that part, but that's also part of it. And also the other major enhancement in 6.4 is in some improvements in the reporting system. We are making some changes to the reporting dashboards, which I think everyone will like. So that's it really. So thanks again for attending. Have a great rest of the day, and look forward to seeing you in a future webinar.